Yes, I am.
So we'll wait one more minute till 7:05 because 5 seems more correct than 4 to me. Yeah, we're all glad you're here. I hope your school year is beginning as well as can be in all of this madness. Okay, so now we have 7:05. So Tom, take it away.
Thanks, Rebecca. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming out on a Friday evening to be with us. It's so good to see all of you here today. My name is Tom Waters, and I'm a member of Rank and File Action. I've been an adjunct at Brooklyn College and other CUNY schools for 9 years now, and I've been involved with the union for almost that long. Many of you know RAFA is an organization that came out of the campaign for 7Kers strike. Those of us involved were deeply impressed by the dedication and drive we witnessed in that campaign, and it usually came from the most vulnerable and exploited members of the union. And we decided that one bad contract couldn't be the end of our work. So in the aftermath of that, we renamed ourselves Rank and File Action and began to think about how we could work toward transforming a moribund and bureaucratic union environment at CUNY into something democratic, something militant and unafraid to challenge repressive labor laws through strikes and withholding our labor, something that acknowledged how neoliberal austerity logic isn't something that exists out there or in the governor's mansion, but that constitutes a defeatist attitude that really has seeped into the bones of the university and into the thinking of even self-described progressive union leaders. Our philosophy for challenging this is outlined in the RAFA program, which Alex is going to post in the chat just now. We invite you to read it and consider if you'd like to join us in these efforts. Above all, we want to build an organization that is capable of fighting for the whole CUNY community, not just token raises for adjuncts or restoring precarious jobs that have already been cut, but full-time contractual employment and an end to the two-tier system as a whole, not least because it erodes union solidarity and faculty governance. Not just periodic tuition freezes for students, but restoring a free and fully funded university that existed for over 100 years until the student body ceased to be of majority European descent. Not just press releases condemning police violence, but an immediate end to the presence of NYPD and ICE on our campuses. If these seem like ambitious goals, they are. But equally ambitious has been the systematic dismantling of public higher education over the last 30 or 40 years. Right now, there is an uprising in the streets against racist state violence. There's an ongoing global pandemic and a looming recession. Reactionary forces are already hard at work implementing their plans, and CUNY is absolutely no exception. If we fail to think as big as our enemies, we're not only harming ourselves, but we are consigning future CUNY workers, students, and community members to live and work in a dying institution. We hope you'll join us in the fight. Thank you for being here. In solidarity.
Thanks, Tom. And then I believe Angeles is also speaking, and I messed up the order, sorry.
Well, that's fine. I think
Thanks.
It actually works better.
Okay, great.
Hi, everyone. I'm Angeles. I'm an immigrant, and I teach at BNCC. I'm a full-timer there in the Modern Languages Department. And I want to speak briefly about the emphasis that this program, as Tom was mentioning, we have put a lot of emphasis on the fight for decolonizing the curriculum, for decolonizing CUNY. And I also want to recommend you to read an article that one of our members, Connor Thomas Reed, published a few days ago, and I'm going to post the link. But basically, we are all part of a university that is a segregated institution, right? Like the faculty doesn't represent, faculty and staff doesn't represent, the student body doesn't represent the people of New York City. And maybe RAFA is also, in a way, a reflect on this, right? So we want to acknowledge this since the beginning. We have different positions within the university, and each one of us is committed to fight for decolonizing the university from our own positions. Some of us, I am a full-timer, I'm tenured, and I'm doing whatever I can to transform the curriculum of my department, which is completely Eurocentric and white. And so I think each one of us has to put the effort in the spaces that we work with, right? Also very important is that, as you are well aware, the PSC leadership put up 10 demands that we are all as union fighting for. None of these demands center anti-racism as something that we should all be concerned fighting. We believe that fighting sorry, I get nervous and I can't speak like spontaneously in English. We believe that we need to organize beyond labor issues, right? Racial issues are important for us. Discrimination issues are important for us. And all of this, I think, is reflected in our program. So yeah, I think I'm just gonna leave it there. And I'm gonna paste the link to Coco's article on the chat. Thank you.
Thank you, Angeles. That was great. I just am realizing too that I didn't introduce myself. My name's Rebecca Smart, and I'm an adjunct at VMCC and at Brook. And I've been working as either a graduate student or an adjunct for CUNY for over 20 years. It's crazy. That's you know, sort of an introduction to who we are as a group and what we believe and some of the things that we're working on. And now we have lots of speakers ahead. And so do we want to have anyone else introduce, or we're ready for the speakers, correct? The first speakers are from FreeCUNY, Molly Daniels, Hunter undergrad, correct? And Hailey Lamb, an undergrad from Brooklyn. And we're so happy that they're here to talk to us about the work they're doing.
Thanks, everyone. And just as a warning, I'm going to share my screen and it can be a little bit disorienting. It kind of like jumps at you when I do that. So just a warning. Okay.
Thank you, Molly, and thank you, Rebecca, for the introduction. I'm Hailey, she, her, a part of FreeCUNY, and thank you to everyone who for coming into this virtual space to think and build together. So who are we? FreeCUNY is an organizing collective of CUNY students, staff, and faculty. We hope to continue the tradition of radical student organizing and recognize this work spans across many lifetimes, and it's only possible then and now because of the work of Black and Brown students who organized occupations of CUNY buildings, sit-ins, and other radical actions while building community. So what is our vision and what does a free CUNY mean to you? So in this slide, you'll be able to see the collective vision of what a free CUNY is. Our vision for a free CUNY must include transit fare coverage, increased funding toward campus infrastructure, free childcare, no cops and military recruiters on campus, expansion of programs serving BIPOC students and staff, equitable pay for staff and all faculty, no tuition, and increased aid toward combating student housing and food apartheid, and so much more. So we believe that to get to this vision, we cannot cooperate with admin. We believe in building solidarity with the community, CUNY students and workers, not administration, and we know that we keep us safe. So the Board of Trustees and the presidents of colleges that kind of run this university, they own companies, sit at the head of boards, and have demonstrated time and time again that they will vote against students' needs. So as Free CUNY members, we have attended and spoken at several Board of Trustees meetings, not with the intention to appeal to their consciousnesses, but to use that space to connect and build with students, staff, and faculty there. But as we know, the Board of Trustees will always use violence to suppress students with these when these meetings are disrupted. So on this slide is a video, and it shows a protest in 2011 where students entered the lobby of Brook while a BOT meeting where a vote which would raise tuition by $300 a year every year for 5 years would be put in place. And 15 to 17 students were arrested and many more were brutalized by police with batons. We will make this slideshow available for folks who want to watch the video later on, but in the interest of time, we'll be moving to the next slide. The next slide shows my own detainment at a Board of Trustees meeting where they voted to approve a $120 wellness fee right before the pandemic hit, right? And In this video, we are all in a hallway after the entire room was kicked out for disrupting the meeting. Sorry. If Molly, if you want to play the video now, we'll just play like a portion of it. And yeah.
No sound, or two, yeah.
Also, there's no sound, but.
I think you have to hit share sound before you share the screen.
Oh.
Which is a thing I learned in my classes.
Gotcha. Okay, well, you get the gist of it without the sound.
Yeah. And again, this slideshow will be available. So we were all like in the hallway after the entire room was kicked out for disrupting this vote. And I was put in handcuffs, I was detained, I was threatened with summons. And I want to highlight specifically that I was only released due to the occupation of that hallway, and that the dynamics of that space were shifted as students, staff, and faculty demonstrated their collective power by refusing to leave. Okay, so the BOT has also long adopted surveillance and policing tactics, heavily targeting Black and Brown students to repress and intimidate organizers. So another example would be at the Hunter BOT meeting in January 2020, the Board of Trustees approved a deal which would put a Starbucks in a space previously dedicated to student art. And students protesting the deal were kicked out of another Board of Trustees meeting. And as they were leaving, oh, sorry about that. Okay. As they were leaving, CUNY cop was filming them and refused to speak to any of the students. And only when the students collectively refused to leave until the cops deleted the video, they took without consent to the students to keep themselves and each other safe. So, okay, so BIPOC students and students fighting for a free CUNY will always be met with violence, as seen by the logging of student activists on quote-unquote enemy lists in 1995, the surveillance of Muslim students at Brooklyn College, and the posting of student activist photos in security headquarters last semester. So when we fight, knowing this, when we fight for a free CUNY, we must also understand that reforms do not work. We cannot fight for tuition freezes, police reform, or programs that offer only a few groups of people on campuses free tuition, like CUNY ASAP, Excelsior, Macaulay, etc. Because as we have seen universities respond to these reformist demands by offering watered down versions of these reforms, and do so in ways that allow them to rescind whatever resources are provided on their own terms, to exclude people who need it, and to dictate who is deserving and undeserving. So while we also make maximalist demands, we also know that people need help right now. And we cannot just sit around making demands of a university built to preserve and uplift whiteness and white people. It means that we need to find ways to enact change without relying on the benevolence of admin. At the beginning of the transition from in-person to online learning, we began pushing professors to take on an A for all policy. Our primary approach included providing students with a network of support that better positioned their own self-advocacy work. Many professors responded positively and in agreement, letting their students know that they were guaranteed an A at the end of the course, acknowledging that during a nationwide pandemic, there was no way that students would be able to produce the work the university unfairly required of them. Here, we reject the university's capitalist principle of evaluating students based on their productivity, and instead imagine a university where learning is not bounded by racist, ableist, sexist, and classist markers of success, and argue that this should be a permanent change made to the university. I'll hand it off to Molly now to talk about other actions that demonstrate our principles. These campaigns are attempts to practice and bring into being the free CUNY we collectively imagine. Thank you. Molly.
Thanks, Hailey. And I'm going to give Hailey a sec to just share her screen because she's going to be doing the same thing. But yeah, so I'm Molly Daniels. I use they, them pronouns, and I go to Hunter College. I'm an undergrad there, and I'm in FreeCUNY. And today, I'm going to speak, like Hailey said, about some of the ways that FreeCUNY is embodying our principles through our campaigns. So when the pandemic hit, FreeCUNY, in addition to its A for All campaign, also developed a mutual aid network. And through this, over 40 CUNY students and community members reached out to us for support, and we were able to meet all of their requests. So we then fundraised and directly redistributed over $6,000 in the form of groceries and direct financial aid. Mutual aid networks are always crucial because Black and Brown communities are always under siege by the state. So mutual aid principles reject the idea of a, quote, deserving poor, and instead uplift the importance of community security and autonomy. In contrast to this, the chancellor's, quote, emergency fund functioned as a lottery system, requiring students to fill out lengthy applications and jump through hoops for emergency financial aid during a global pandemic. This reinforces the very idea that mutual aid networks are seeking to dismantle the idea of a deserving poor. And it also created a competition between students for financial aid. So despite the narrative of an emergency fund, the CUNY chancellor, the CUNY presidents, and top administrative staff all make hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, which you'll see in the next slide. A sum that should go instead towards free tuition, equitable and fair pay for adjuncts and staff, and an expansion of programs serving BIPOC students, such as the KCC Urban Farm, which I'll talk about in a second. But instead, many staff and student aides across CUNY are on a month-to-month employment basis. Thousands of adjuncts have been fired during a global pandemic, and there's a systemic defunding of Black, Puerto Rican, and Latinx studies. So when I speak about the KCC Urban Farm, which you'll see on the next slide, FreeCUNY is fighting alongside the Save the KCC Urban Farm Committee to stop budget cuts to the farm. So this is a space that is already realizing and practicing the principles of an anti-racist and anti-colonial CUNY. They're oriented towards transforming CUNY spaces into ones that serve and engage with the communities that these universities impose themselves upon. The KCC Urban Farm is a quarter-acre farm on the campus of Kingsborough Community College that produces over 3,000 pounds of free food every season for students and their families that are fighting food apartheid. The farm is stewarded by and is a safe space for Black and Indigenous POC students and queer and trans students on an incredibly homophobic, transphobic, racist campus. On this farm, Black and brown students feed, teach, and care for other Black and brown students. The workers on this farm, not the university, transform this space into one that feeds its peers and community. We must protect, sustain, and support spaces like the KCC Urban Farm, which is facing massive budget cuts if the KCC President Schrader is able to push them through. So after we finish presenting, we're gonna send some details about how you can support the campaign in the chat. On the next slide, you can see that FreeCUNY is working towards building deeper connections with the communities that CUNY both occupies and polices, and learning how we can support their struggles. So during the pandemic, our mutual aid network has been open to CUNY students and community members. And we've also recently started the practice of posting weekly community support requests from Black folks that are submitted to us through social media. But we don't want to misrepresent our work where it's at right now. We are aspiring towards deeper community connections, and we've not yet cultivated them as extensively as we'd like to. And on the next slide, FreeCUNY is also working on building connections with SUNY organizers in recognition of the fact that we're all connected. So last year, FreeCUNY presented at the New Paltz Austerity Conference, where organizers discussed FreeCUNY's principles, strategy, and this zine that was created by CUNY organizers on austerity at CUNY. So you can see some of the history of the implementation of tuition, as well as FreeCUNY at FTP3 in January. So on the next slide, you can also see that FreeCUNY and People's Cultural Plan, which is another New York group, also co-hosted a Speak Out Against Cops in Schools on January 31st in front of the Department of Education, with speakers from the Yaya Network, which is the Youth Activists and Youth Allies Network, I believe, and Teens Take Charge. So FreeCUNY contributed to this zine as pictured, made by the People's Cultural Plan, parts of which are on the slide. So FreeCUNY started last year on July 1st, and since then we have emphasized the importance of building trust beyond the conditions of our institutionally mediated relationships. This trust has and can only be built by refusing the sanctioned political channels presented by the university and its kind. We are rooted and guided by an uncompromising commitment to liberation, which has helped us build a movement fluid enough to respond quickly and creatively to the crises that are both created and sustained by the university. Through this, FreeCUNY has and will continue to sustain that trust that we have built and will one day build. because that is worth more than anything the institution has to offer. So thank you for your time today, and feel free to tap me or Hailey if you have any questions.
That's fantastic. I'm so impressed with all the work that you guys have been doing as I've gotten to know a few of you. And so wonderful. So now we go to our next speaker, Tatiana Mercer from LaGuardia YDSA. Is Tatiana here?
Yes. Hey guys,
Hi.
I'm Tatiana. By the way, sorry I don't have my video on. I'm kind of in a compromised space. So I'm Tatiana. I am a part of the OC for LaGuardia Community College's YDSA chapter and also CUNY YDSA's chapter. And I'm thrilled to be here to be talking with you guys about YDSA and what we're doing. We essentially work as the student and youth section of DSA, which is the much larger organization. Our mission as YDSA is to fight for the immediate needs of workers and students alike, and also while building our capacity to call for more radical and structural changes to society. As socialists, our mission is essentially to uplift and highlight the struggles of the working class and to make sure their demands are being met and to reject the ideas of a capitalist regime, especially in a time of a public health crisis where the likelihood of food, healthcare, education, and jobs are becoming less and less, and the interests of the working class are constantly being overlooked. Since after our Defend CUNY rally, CUNY YDSA has been trying to discuss ways we can join in with adjunct professors, join in on the struggle as we fight for a more free and fully funded CUNY. The semester has started and classes have already begun. So this is like the time to act now, to keep on building onto the struggle, because right now we still have mass layoffs of adjunct professors still happening. We still have adjunct professors getting paid poverty wages and having their labor exploited. You know, we're still getting a tuition hike, and CUNY, as it has been, is still experiencing budget cuts. As CUNY YDSA, we have already established that as a group that the rally is just the beginning of the fight, and that we will mobilize around getting our demands met when it comes to making sure that CUNY is fully funded, and that programs like ASAP should not suffer cuts. Students are being provided with a quality education, the buildings are safe and sanitized, our tuition doesn't keep increasing on us, and professors are not overworked, and their contracts guarantees the security in their pay, and absolutely no cops on our campus. And that also includes divesting from them and investing in the quality of our education. As a student, being involved with CUNY YDSA, I have learned plenty about the struggles of campus workers and adjunct professors. And now I know that we need each other, and we need to strengthen our ties with faculty. We need to unite and mobilize, because when adjuncts are affected, students are also affected, and vice versa. So with that being said, you know, if you guys want to learn more about, you know, CUNY YDSA and what we do, I can personally drop LaGuardia's social media, Twitter, and you guys can just reach out and DM us, and I can also drop our email. Thank you guys.
That's great. Thank you so much, Tatiana. So next on the list, we have a CET, which is a continuing education teacher. This is another title of faculty at CUNY, and they teach continuing ed classes that are very diverse, but I will let her speak for a few moments. Lisa, you're here, correct?
Yep. Hey, everybody. I'm Lisa. I'm a CET, which is a continuing education teacher and an adjunct at LaGuardia, but I'm part of a group of CETs that are organizing to get better working conditions, because basically a CET does the same work as an adjunct, but we get paid less and we have no benefits. So I want to share, can I share my screen? No.
Can we make that so that she can share? Yeah,
I can just
so-
I can just read too if that. I
You
don't
should
know.
be able to share it now.
Okay, let me see. Okay, so this is about us, and basically our grievances, our lack of benefits. We have no health insurance, PTO, sick time, vacation days, or parental leaves, or other benefits. We have a lot of job insecurity. We usually find out at the very last minute, and we don't have any contracts, so we never know what we're going to be doing from semester to semester. There's no advancing into adjunct positions. They make it very clear that you'll never be full-time and you'll never be an adjunct if you're a CET. There's a lack of transparency in regards to funding, reappointment schedules, and other issues. We have unequal compensation, and also in this time we had issues transitioning to distance learning. We weren't able to provide feedback. I think most teachers had that experience too. So what we are focusing on for demands are no layoffs or non-reappointments, lower enrollment so that more teachers can get classes, transparency, guaranteed hours, and we want 20 hours because that's when they allow you to get health insurance, and they do it on purpose that they never give you 20 hours so that you can't get health insurance. And then time work equals time paid, and online teaching support, because as an adjunct I was given paid training opportunities, but not as a CET. So that's something we're seeking as well. I guess what we're doing right now is we're starting to do actions, and we're starting to, we've been organizing since the winter, but now we're starting to try to mobilize and do actions. But I'd like to ask from the chat, I'm gonna put my email, my personal email in the chat. Everybody here today, I don't know the group too well, but if you know any CETs or you know a program that employs CETs and you'd be willing to connect with me, either email me or put your email in the chat. I'd love to. We're doing a lot of outreach right now, so we're mainly at LaGuardia, and I'd like to expand our reach to other campuses. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Lisa. Yeah, so it's really, you know, the CETs are more exploited than adjuncts, and it's outrageous, and we should all rally with them. And again, if, you know, anyone knows CETs on any of their campuses, you know, please connect them with CET Justice. They're, you know, they're meeting fairly regularly, and they've got a lot of good stuff going on. So I also wanted to take this time to remind everyone that so can we put the list of the group, can someone put the list of the groups in the chat again? We're gonna have, after our speakers are done, we're gonna have breakout groups, and we have 4 different groups. And so we're trying to, Lisa, are you still sharing your screen?
Oh, I'm sorry. Jeez. I was just.
It's okay. I was just like, wait, is she sending an email now?
Sorry.
Anyway, it's fine. Okay, so as you see in the chat, there's 4 breakout groups. So what we would like you to do is rename yourself with a number. So for example, you see I'm number 3, Rebecca. So that means I'm going to be in group 3. And if you don't know how to do that, you take your cursor, hover it over your face, look for the box with the 3 dots, click on that. There'll be an option that says rename. And so just put the number of the group that you'd like to be in. And then when it's time to go into groups, that'll make it easier for us to do that. Okay, great. So the next speaker is Robert Cuffy from the DS37. So the PSC is one union at CUNY, and DC37 also has workers for CUNY. So Robert Cuffy, I don't see you. Are you here? You ready to go? Is Robert here? Does anyone know if Robert's here?
I don't see him.
Interesting. Okay, so we will move to the next speaker, and then if Robert makes it, then we will move him. The next, wait, I can't see who this is. The UUP-Member Action Coalition, MAC. Peter Ikeler, Cesar, Barros, and Andrew Solar-Greco, all SUNY faculty. Thank you, Raiko. Okay, take it away, guys.
I don't know if Peter is somewhere there.
I'm here. Hi.
There he is. Yeah.
And Andrew, I think he is somewhere there too.
Yep.
So I'll start. So hi everybody. My name is Cesar. I'm an immigrant, and I teach. I'm a full-timer at SUNY New Paltz. I teach in the Latin American and Caribbean Studies program in Spanish, and I'm so happy that Hailey or Molly mentioned that FreeCUNY went to the Austerity University Conference, and I'm proud to be one of the organizers. And actually, that was an initiative that started also with MAC, Member Action Coalition, which is a new group. It's a sister organization, I would say, with FreeCUNY and mostly with RAFA. We are a dissident group within our union. We are looking for a truly democratic union. UUP, it's been a long time a union that it's top down, that it's not offering, spaces for rank and file to, promote their ideas, and dissidence is not really considered something good for our university. We are SUNY. UUP represents SUNY faculty and professionals. Andrew, my colleague, he's a professional. And SUNY, we are sister universities, but it's different in many ways. At SUNY, we are all spread out throughout this big state. And that is a challenge for real democracy. It works very well for power too, to keep us divided. For our students, it's also very hard to organize among campuses. They're far apart too. So we're a coalition, inter-campus coalition of faculty, staff that believe that a union and a university is built by workers and by rank and file, right? And that top-down organization is bullshit. So we're trying to horizontalize everything. We have members. It's a fairly new group, and we have members in several campuses, and we're growing. We're trying to get delegates affiliated with MAC in every campus. We're trying to, take every chapter and, try to build this, rebuild this union. I think I'm gonna let Peter go on, but I wanted to say that, reflecting on what everybody has said, our commitment, one of our commitments is to fight austerity, and we believe that austerity is racist, that the fight against austerity is an anti-racist fight, that no decolonial fight can be done if the state doesn't do its job, which is fund our public university. A public university should be fully funded, otherwise it's not public. And the public university is or should be the university. The democratic promise that a public university gives should be fully funded. Peter, do you want to continue?
Sure. Yeah, sure. Thank you, Cesar. I can just add a few points. I mean, Cesar really covered the basics here. Cesar and myself, actually, we came out of the CUNY system, and I believe Cesar's partner actually works there now. So we have a lot of connections, and we've been very much inspired by the ongoing series of rank and file upheavals that have been going on among CUNY faculty and staff and students together, particularly the 7K'er strike, which then morphed into RAFA. So we would love to recreate something of that force within our own union. And Cesar, really gave folks the outline and some of the similarities, but also big differences, geographical and otherwise, between our two systems. But just in terms of the two unions that we're dealing with, the two union leaderships that we're both, mobilizing in opposition towards and trying to hold their feet to the fire to actually do something for their members. Our members, that even outside of MAC, outside of us, often look to the PSC as this the PSC leadership as this radical progressive union that can really get things done. That's been so it's interesting, and I kind of know the truth, because I was in that union for a while as a grad student and adjunct, and I have a lot of, like many of you, friends still in the system, but it's a very different ballgame in the UUP, and we're trying to shake it up. We have a very ossified leadership that does, from time to time, say certain good words and sort of tokenizes the anti-racist struggle, but really doesn't put the money where the mouth is, and like so many other things. So we, as a very nascent reform caucus, have we've held a public forum, particularly when the fight against police violence was really heating up in the early part of the summer, to sort of talk about that and understand what our role can be to aid that. We put out a call to defund police, to disarm police on our campus, and to defund them in our communities. And I'm sure you guys are familiar with this as well. It may have been similar at CUNY. I know it was in the K-12 schools in the city. But our campus police are now armed, and they've only been so in many cases since the 90s. They weren't always actually police. They were just campus security. And they often, and on my campus, particularly Old Westbury, have a very established track record of harassing students of color. So it's unfortunately very typical antagonistic relationship that we see in so many areas and across the country, but actually happening on our campuses. And so we have mobilized as a reform group to say these don't even need to be police. That was just a random political decision made back in the 90s, and we can undo that, right? It's entirely possible. But of course, we need to build the necessary pressure to put these things forward. So I really appreciate folks giving us the opportunity to be here and also to learn from you guys. I guess I'll kick it over to Andrew if he has anything more to say, or if folks have questions. Great to be here tonight. Thank you.
Hey folks, hi, I'm Andrew. I'm from SUNY Stony Brook out on Long Island. And yeah, I'm on the MAC steering committee, as are Peter and Cesar. So yeah, I was dropping some links in the chat if you want to check us out. Our union is UUP, United University Professions. UUP represents faculty and staff. I'm a staff member in the computer science department at Stony Brook. Represents faculty and staff at the 29 of the SUNY campuses. So any of the academic medical centers or the four-year colleges. So any of the SUNY community colleges are not kind of UUP represented. And yeah, our union is it's funny how Peter put it, because I completely agree that we look to CUNY and we're like, oh man, if only, I know you all have delegate assemblies, once a month or something. We haven't had a delegate assembly in almost a year. So our leadership is completely unaccountable, and our delegates, which are the highest decision-making body of our union, are completely not consulted whatsoever during quite possibly the greatest conflation of crises that our union has ever faced. So, we're really fighting to build a democratic union. Our statewide elections were supposed to happen in April, and they've just been postponed until January. So all of these people who are up, their terms were up, are just continuing to serve. And just so you're aware, our SUNY campuses are scattered throughout the state. So we have campuses, at the Canadian border, way to the north near Montreal, and campuses, in Buffalo and all the way out near Toronto, as well as on, Long Island and all across the state. We do actually have 3 campuses in the city, believe it or not. We have SUNY Optometry, SUNY Downstate in Brooklyn, and SUNY Maritime, which is essentially under the Throgs Neck Bridge. And we're trying to build a union that is committed to social and racial justice, a member-driven union instead of a top-down union dominated by staff and leadership, a democratic union that holds its leadership accountable and organizes for the common good. And it's interesting because a lot of our students on our campuses majority of our students are people of color that come from New York City, whether they commute out to campuses like Peter or Cesar's in New Paltz and Old Westbury, respectively, or they dorm on many of the campuses upstate. My campus, the train station, the LIRR station, is always crowded as hell on Friday nights of people going back and forth to New York City. But a lot of our campuses are located in predominantly white areas with a majority people of color population. Some of these upstate towns are really, really, really white, and it creates a lot of tension. And our students are dealing with a lot of these racist policing and racist practices that our campuses produce and reproduce. So it's something that we're acutely aware of, and we're trying to think of how we can, have our union and our organization really work on these issues. But overall, the way we see it with CUNY, with NYSIT, which we're all a part of, and the labor movement in general, is that we feel like no one's coming to save us. It's definitely not our leadership. We need to build the union that we want to see, and we need to fight for the values of democracy and transparency and racial justice and social justice more than ever before. And ultimately we need to support each other. So if we know folks within the PSC CUNY bargaining unit, we're going to let y'all know, so you could hopefully reach out to them, and we would appreciate the same. So if you know anyone that works at a SUNY campus, please send them our way. I'll put our email address in the chat box, and of course the contact information is on our website as well. But we need your support to help us make these connections and turn our union around, so we can fight together for our shared mutual values. So you can check out our website. You can reach out if you know anyone. I'll say too that I'm not a CUNY alum, but my in-laws actually met at Lehman and got married, and my wife is actually also a Lehman grad. So I've heard many good things about CUNY. I'm a SUNY alum, but anyway, besides the point. So yeah, please check out our website, and if you could support us in any way, it'd be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Unmute. Thank you guys. Yeah, it's really interesting to me that you guys think, the PSC is the radical group. It's funny. Okay, so our speaker who wasn't here is now here, Robert Cuffy from DC 37 Progressives. Thanks for coming, Robert. You ready to speak?
Hey everyone, thanks for having me. Sorry about that, comrade doing too many things. But I'm really happy to be here, and I feel like I slot in very well after the comrades from SUNY, because I too come from a large meandering union stretch across a very large landscape, which poses difficulty for organizing. So I'm a member of the DC 37 Progressives Caucus, which we recently formed within District Council 37 in New York City. And our district council is composed of over 100,000 union members, all broken up into much smaller locals. I don't have the number off the top of my head, but like some of the locals, of course, have an outsized influence, for example. So I'm a member of Local 371, the Social Service Employees Union, and I work as a child welfare supervisor. And members of my union, just Local 371 alone, work in departments like Human Resources Administration, which does welfare. Members of my union work in housing preservation and the Housing Preservation Department, HPD. Members of my local work in the Parks Department. So just my local alone is spread across several city agencies. All the people seem to work in different buildings. And then if you factor in the other locals, so there's locals within DC 37 that also represent state workers who work for the state court system. So we have a challenge in getting to know each other as well. So I can say, for example, starting with the example of organizing within the local when COVID-19 hit, one of the challenges we had in my workplace at the Administration for Children's Services was just communicating with each other. It was a big challenge as far as to how we could even stay in touch with each other. And in that, we learned from the teachers, the Red for Ed teachers in West Virginia and other states, who created private Facebook groups to keep in touch with each other. So there are about somewhere between 1,500 to 2,000 child protective workers and supervisors who are all in Local 371. So I was able to create a private Facebook group where we got together, shared stories about what was happening at our jobs, about the lack of PPE, about managers still sending us out to do visits without PPE, to go into people's homes, and the ways in which it both exposed us to COVID-19 and made us vectors for the disease, carrying it from house to house and then back to our office. And we were able to organize a petition all together based on the stories people told from the different boroughs and different offices as to what was happening. And we eventually spoke to the media, and we got it out there that the agency was pretty much shamed into giving us personal protective equipment. So as we made the turn from the beginning of COVID-19 now towards organizing, where the budget has passed and there's this $10 billion shortfall that the city is trying to cover, we're organizing against these 22,000 proposed layoffs. And that's been a challenge, especially because we don't know all the workers, right? So it's often the case that I'll be at a protest about something else and mention that I'm a DC 37 member, or now a member of DC 37 Progressive. And a random person will come up to me and be like, how can we get something done? Because our union isn't doing anything. Our union isn't doing anything. How can we get something done? One story, there was a woman who works in the state court system whose sister was a member of the Department of Education and a teacher and passed away from COVID. And this woman sought me out at one of the teacher protests where I was helping to MC to say, how can I do more as a union member to honor my sister's legacy? So it goes to show that the leadership of the unions, really based on this position they have of balancing between management and the ranks in the union, the members of the union, have been really timid about responding to the austerity measures that have been coming from the city and the state. And they've in fact just shut out the membership and gone behind closed doors. Gone behind closed doors to negotiate with management to come up with solutions. And the solution they've come up with at this point is these pension buyouts and seeking loans from the state to avert the layoffs. And many workers are breathing a sigh of relief because many of them are in provisional titles and they would be the ones on the chopping block. But at the end of the day, all they're doing is taking the layoffs from up front and kind of putting them in the back end, right? What they're doing is putting attrition in place as a way to avoid the layoffs, because I feel like my workplace is a good example. I'm a supervisor level 1, I'm an assistant supervisor. Assistant supervisor, so if my supervisor, who is an older person, takes the pension buyout, she's left and I'm left to do all the work that she's gone and I'm left to do all the work that she does. But also, if it's true that the work we do as civil servants is truly important for making the city run, if we're truly keeping children safe, right, then it goes to show the city is not really committed to children. It's not really committed to the elderly. It's not committed to a robust public service because it's willing to cut it one way or the other. And that's really what it's about. It's about the fact that we live in a society where profits are the main goal, where the reopening of society is the main goal, where getting the economy back on track is the real goal, where even though in New York City alone, over 30,000 people have died from COVID, New York City is being held up as a model. So Mayor de Blasio and Governor Cuomo are under this immense pressure to show that they're business-friendly people. So the real way to fund our schools, fund the public service, stop layoffs is something they're not willing to do. They don't want to tax Wall Street. They don't want to pass a tax on the millionaires and billionaires and the businesses and corporations in the state. So that's why rank and file caucuses become necessary. That's why it becomes necessary for the dissidents to carry out the work that the union's supposed to do. And I'll just end by saying it's also critically important that we challenge the leadership of our unions, right? Because it's not as if we simply have a theoretical disagreement. This disagreement is about the direction in which our struggles go. And the most important thing in these struggles are the resources that the unions possess and the reputation they have as organizations of the working class. The unions are collecting all of our dues. They sit on these very expensive coffers of millions of dollars. And they also have the list, right? They have the list of who the union members are, that they can contact them. I'm sure if RAFA was able to contact everyone in the PSC, it would be towards a strike authorization pledge. If as a member of DC 37, I'd be trying to find a way to get around the pension bias and actually maybe hold a protest or a job action. They're using it to tell us things like, oh, the census is coming up. Go get the census done. And while it's important to be counted and the census is important, what's more important is to show people that unions are actually organizations of struggle, right? That we can actually use confrontation and not negotiation as a way to win our demands. And that we can actually make demands that put our bosses and management in the city in a tough position. The movement of rank and file educators make a demand, for example, to say that schools should not reopen until everyone tests negative for a period of 14 days. The United Federation of Teachers has not made that demand, but yet they're sending kids back to school. So I'm gonna just cede the little bit left of my time to Reiko, who can speak to the work DC 37 union members are doing on CUNY campuses, because that's another place DC 37 is recognized. If anyone wants to get in touch with the DC 37 progressives, I'll be dropping our email address into the chat. And we're also, our website, dc37progressives.nyc, and we're on Instagram and Twitter as well under DC37 Progressives. I want to, before, just say thank you to RAFA. This is the second time you guys have had me in a few months, and I'm really impressed with the work you guys are doing on campus, especially the ways in which it's broadened out beyond just faculty to include staff members to have a really holistic picture of what the campus looks like, especially given that people of color are represented more in the staff than in the faculty. So I'll leave it to Rico.
Okay, thank you, Robert. It's so nice to have you here. Do you see me now? Okay, so I am not DC 37 member and I am not college assistant. So I don't, I feel hesitant to speak here. If there's any college assistant here or DC 37, I think it's pretty much college assistant or IT services at CUNY. But if there's any member of the DC 37 here at CUNY, and if you want to talk about your situation, please do, if you can raise your hand. Otherwise, I just wanted to speak a little bit about, because another RAFA member, Natalie Kong, she is the college assistant and she couldn't make it today and she wished she could. So I just wanted to pass the information that Natalie is trying to make a mailing list to connect the college assistants and as, at CUNY. And as Robert said, they've been wondering what their unions have been doing. And for a long time, Natalie, for example, couldn't join RAFA or 7K strike because she, belonged to another union. And she didn't choose it. It was just like, it was placed there. And so when she realized what the union is, she couldn't really, join us. But now, because RAFA opened up to include DC 37 or anybody, all the rank and file workers and students, now she is a RAFA member and trying to organize. And I think it's really important that, to know that most of the college assistants are alumni of the, of the program. So naturally, I don't have the number, but naturally, college assistants at CUNY must be, predominantly or like bigger proportion brown and black. And so I would like, and for example, at Hunter College where I work, recently 133 college assistants, lost a job. And at the art department, half of the 30 college assistants lost a job. And they are the bones of the department. They do all the dirty things that, faculty ask them to do. So that's how the departments are running. And we really have to do something about this, but nobody's really doing anything about the college assistant at CUNY. So I think it's really important. And I couldn't ask Natalie if it's okay to share her contact. So I'm gonna post my email in the chat. So if you are a college assistant or you know some college assistant that you work with, please get them in touch with me and I'll forward a message to Natalie. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Robert, and thank you, Raiko. That was great. So our last speaker is Erica Miners from Critical Resistance Abolitionist Educators. And I know they are here because they're on the first page, at least in my view.
I'm super excited to be here. I'm sharing my time with the amazing Ujju, who's also on the call. I'm coming to you right now from Detroit. I'm generally in Chicago. I just want to say I'm really energized to be here. I work in Chicago at a public university, Northeastern Illinois University, and I'm a member of my labor union, the UPI Local 4100, and we are having similar struggles around radicalizing our union movement. And I also, I'm going to flag here the Caucus of Rank and File Educators Core, which I'm going to be talking a little bit about the K through 12 Chicago Teachers Union, also in some comments today. But I just want to say it's really energizing to hear all the wonderful, strong organizing that's happening. Particularly want to shout out the FreeCUNY folks for their presentation. Just really appreciate that. So thank you, Rafa. Thanks, everybody. I'm going to talk just for 8 minutes with Ujju, and we're going to kind of go back and forth. I'm just going to start out by talking about critical resistance, and I'll share in the chat the URL in a second of the organization. It's an organization that has been building an international network to end our reliance on the prison industrial complex for almost 20 years. And critical resistance comes from and is shaped by the Black radical tradition. Some of the things that CR does is supports and proliferates campaigns. For example, campaigns to close prisons, oppose new jails, oppose the expansion of policing, to challenge the foster care system as an expansion of this, an arm of the prison industrial complex. So CR runs campaigns and supports campaigns. Another thing that CR does is builds analysis and tools to support this work. So concepts like the prison industrial complex and abolition are partially brought to you by decades of collective organizing by groups like Critical Resistance. And the last thing I'll flag that CR does is creates opportunities for political education. We create materials, we publish toolkits, curriculum materials, convenings, resources, because we feel like this work is, for all of us, about learning and unlearning, and that continuous project of that. So I just wanted to start out by locating myself and Ujju within this organization, Critical Resistance, that's building an international network to end our reliance on the prison industrial complex. And Ujju's going to talk a little bit now about the group of us within CR that has been developing some material. So I'm turning it over to you.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Erica. And yeah, I just also share thanking everybody for inviting us here today. I am a proud alumni of CUNY, former member of the PSC, so really glad to be here. Yeah, as Erica mentioned, Critical Resistance Abolitionist Educators is part of CR. We're a work group of critical resistance of the national network that was started in 2012 and is made up of abolitionists who are rooted in K-12 schools or institutions of higher education, or in other community-based organizations that do education, right? And our goal then is to really advance abolition through developing tools, organizing, and political education resources that can be used with communities at different levels, but in the classroom, in the community, and beyond. So now I think Erica's going to talk a little bit about some of the work we've done, and particularly a document we started working on.
Yes, excellent. We developed sort of in the beginning of the uprising, although many of us had been working collectively, this network that Ujju was talking about, and also in our communities on particular campaigns or around defund policing movements, more so in our neighborhoods rather than on campuses. At the beginning of the uprising this summer, we felt that it was really important to try to use this moment to push for kind of deeper connections between what we saw that was happening on the streets and what we wanted to be happening on our campuses. So we put together kind of a quick and dirty, a compromise document. I think it's important that it's also collectively done. Bunch of us fighting over words and language, but I think collective work is hard work and important work, and the struggle, that is the struggle, right? So we're from different kinds of colleges, different kinds of employment positions, all that, trying to put together a document that was trying to take this opportunity that we're in, this political moment where more folks are identifying as abolitionists, right, which I think is both an opportunity and a risk, to try to point to some of the learnings that we have and unlearnings that we have done through organizations like Critical Resistance, but also to try to deepen that work on campus, that yes, it's absolutely about defunding the police, but it's also, we saw connected to other kinds of struggles on campuses. So we put together this sort of short 2-pager kind of on ways to grow abolition on campus that was kind of trying to connect some of the conversations that we're a part of on our own individual campuses, to network that and to de-silo that work, but also to use that use this political moment as a point of opportunity to kind of deepen. So looking at, I was so excited for the I grew up in, the nation state that gets called Canada, and free post-secondary education or almost free was one of my pathways. So I think really trying to make connections between abolitionist work on campus, defunding police, but also some of these other initiatives. So I think maybe Ujju is going to give a little flag of some of the more stuff on that document, and then we just have a couple of summarizing points.
So I think, as Erica mentioned, one of the kind of things, there's deep connections to what you all presented as FreeCUNY and what we tried to document as what we think is like a growing living document, right? Growing out of practice and saying, how can we put together some of these lessons learned from work into a document in this moment that might help us root and grow our work in community and institutions and schools, wherever we're at, right? But kind of put that together and know that they'll change and transform as we grow more work. And so thinking about that, we kind of thought about it through, kind of the 3 different lenses. One is, how do we work to dismantle policing and the prison industrial complex more broadly within our institutions? How do we work to build within those institutions? And then how do we work to transform the institutions, but also work in a larger kind of movement sense, right? And so the first is really clarifying the terms, making clear kind of where those ties are between our institutions and police, between local police, ICE, private security, surveillance, but then, also working to build coalitions with workers and unions within our institutions and across unions, as you all are doing, and kind of demonstrate so well that practice, and working to build also then together upon practices of transformative justice, for example, that have been grown and developed in community, and learning from, again, those lessons. How do we be, as we work to dismantle kind of ties to policing and police in our institutions, how do we also work to build up then other systems that we need and our capacity to keep each other safe without relying on the police. or policing mechanisms. And then how do we also work, as you all mentioned in FreeCUNY, how, you know, and I kind of was introduced, I feel like part of the legacy that I was introduced to as an organizer when I was younger was SLAM, which also worked to decolonize, right, CUNY in really powerful ways. So really work to then kind of build up the programs that aren't just teaching about, but rooted in community, right? So how do we build those ties of accountability, like you all were talking about, deeply to community and frontline organizations, and also understand the place that universities are in. So like somebody else said about SUNYs, right? How do we work to build kind of connections to local organizations, understanding the gentrifying ways that universities are often used, right? So for example, I worked for a very long time as an organizer in a community adjacent to, but not part of, the Upper West Side, but close enough to Barnard that, as radical as Barnard was, it was also a gentrifying policing force in the community that damaged the community just as much as police or the child welfare system did, or other kind of more visible forces, right, that were encroaching. And then finally, how do we also then just work to kind of build study and struggle, right? How do we kind of work beyond just the confines of the institution to build study groups, work for organizing, and understand ourselves as part of a much larger movement for justice and transformation.
Excellent. I'm just going to maybe quickly wrap up with a couple of points about this group is still continuing to meet and produce materials and et cetera, including a webinar on October the 15th between Critical Resistance and American Studies and some other networks that's going to be summarizing some of this work around abolition, in particular campus policing. So stay tuned if you're interested on the CR site, or email me or Ujju. We'll share our email addresses in the chat box in a second to learn more about some of this work. But I just want to flag that I think folks working in the post-secondary context have a lot to learn, in particular around divestment from policing from the K through 12 context. I think labor unions, the Caucus of Rank and File Educators in particular in Chicago, we've learned immensely from them, you know, about how a labor union can develop and grow an anti-white supremacy stance, and also partnership with communities, and also kind of be on the road towards abolition. I don't think they're an abolitionist union yet, but they're really developing that. So I think that we have a lot to learn from some of the struggles that K through 12 contexts have been engaged in for much longer around divestment from policing. The Black Organizing Project, a community-based organization in Oakland, spent 10 years, right, campaigning to get cops out of Oakland public schools, and just won it this year. 10 years of community-based struggle work. So we have a lot to learn from those organizations and communities and K through 12 organizing networks. I also think I want to flag just quickly, one other thing we're learning is reform is really tricky. We can already see campus unions, campus administration buying off groups, you know, supporting this Cops for a Day, using existing departments like criminology to sort of further naturalize policing on context. So I just want to flag, you know, that kind of that reform moment. And I also do want to just lift up that, you know, now abolition, the popularity of abolition, I, you know, like to say now that everybody's an abolitionist, I think it's both an opening and a challenge. And I think that collectivizing, like RAFA's doing, like the FreeCUNY folks are doing, creating proliferating opportunities like for political education and sharing. I've learned so much from the privilege of being on this call for an hour is really central. So I just want to end with that. So that's it. Thank you so much for inviting us to be a part of this and to learn alongside. And I'm looking forward to staying connected. And I'll put my email in the chat if people want to follow up.
Stu. And so that ends the speaker portion of the town hall. And now we're about 10-15 minutes ahead, but we still think or behind, that it's important to have the breakout groups be 20 minutes long. So we're probably going to go past 8:30. So just in case anyone, you know, had another pressing appointment, that's where we are. So for those of you who haven't put your name in or put the number of the group you'd like to join with your name, please do that now so we can move you to the groups. And who is speaking to briefly what the groups are? Am I supposed to do that, or is someone else going to speak to what the individual groups are? If you haven't seen the chat or the, I'm sorry, the agenda in the chat that has the, oh, sorry, I just did something. Anyways, can someone put the agenda in the chat or the breakout group? So centering anti-racism and organizing is group 1. Discussion of work to rule job actions is group 2. Continued strike authorization vote organizing is group 3. And then group 4 is action towards student solidarity. And again, if you want more details, it's in the agenda, and Nick shared the agenda up in the chat. So Alex, are you making up the groups?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, cool. Don't call me ma'am.
All right.
So kidding.
Yes, comrade. Yes.
Thank you. Just makes me feel old. Okay. All right. So it looks like
We
there's
ready
a
to
few
go?
people who haven't chosen a group. I think go ahead and start and oh, nice. Nice. Go to the groups, and then whoever's left, they can ask specifically.
Do we want to do 30-second intros?
I mean, that's fine. I don't have one prepared for the group I'm in, so someone else has to do that for group 3, but.
How many minutes do we have?
30 seconds.
No. For breakout.
For the group, 20 minutes.
Okay.
Okay, so group 1, does someone want to give a 30-second?
Oh, sure. Yeah, group 1 is about how we can actually achieve the decolonization and anti-racism through labor organizing, because it's sometimes hard to connect the two, but obviously they are so connected in one. So we're gonna discuss like concretely what we can do about this.
Okay, perfect. Group 2, who's speaking? Who's got the 30 seconds?
I could talk about it. So we're going to talk about work to rule tactics, which, if you don't know, basically is only doing the amount of work that you are paid for, not working extra hours or anything like that. So talking about how we can do that on the local level at individual departments and campuses, and sort of strategize as a building action towards a strike.
Okay, great. Group 3, Tom, I believe, is gonna speak to that.
Yeah, thanks, Rebecca. Yeah, so in group 3, we're talking about 2 like very specific organizing tactics. One, which I'm sure a lot of you have already seen, is the intra-PSC strike authorization vote petition, which now has over 1,200 signatories, and how we can sort of construct like phone banking armies, both across CUNY, but also localized to campuses. The second thing we're talking about in that group is the formation of strike and/or strike authorization vote committees on individual CUNY campuses. There are a couple campuses where they exist right now, but we would like to spread those as far and wide as possible.
Okay, and finally, group 4, who's actions towards student solidarity?
Yep, this breakout group is going to explore the ways in which faculty and students can work together to support student actions and for students to understand the university as a political structure.
Fantastic. Okay,
Right.
so we're going to do the groups at 15 minutes, not 20 minutes, just to save a little time. And while you're in these groups, or if there was someone else you're interested in, exchange contact information. Yeah, Lisa, 3 is about phone banking. Yeah, let's go to the groups.
All right, off we go. Enjoy. Karina, did you want to be in a particular group?
You guys had great conversations. Tom was saying in our group that they're never long enough. But I think, you know, we heard some good ideas and got some good thoughts on solidarity across titles. And is there someone who's going to be sort of summing up, or? Sammy, mute yourself. Thank you, Sammy. Oh, Sammy. Did we have a person who was gonna, what have we learned, sum up of the town hall, or was that me?
Should we report from each group briefly?
Okay, great, perfect. Thank you, Raiko. So group one, Raiko, do you want to give a report?
Yeah, and never enough, never enough. It feels like we just started talking about this because it's so important and we need a lot more time. Okay, we need a lot more time, but still in this 10-15 minutes a lot of great ideas came up. You know, we discussed like, well, you know, if we follow the logic of the, you know, of the administration, they would always say like, oh, we are doing so much for the, you know, for the black and brown students, blah blah blah, but you know, we cannot leave them to do that. So we need some kind of a disruption, like really serious disruption. And also we talked about like what kind of a direct action we can take in terms of faculty hiring. We never get to the curriculum part, so you know, we only talk about the faculty hiring. But what about like Angela said, what about like we use that, you know, Facebook, Twitter, or something, starting with the numbers, like, you know, how many faculties are black and brown, how many faculties are BIPOC, and, you know, just show the numbers, because even the adjuncts are very not diverse at CUNY. And so just, you know, and then share it with student groups and, you know, adjuncts groups or whatever the groups, that would be really great and powerful. And then we also talk about the hiring, like, you know, maybe adjuncts can get support from students to push them. So in order, you know, not for the radical classes to be cut, but also like students should be on the hiring committee in every department. So it has to be like a departmental issue, but also we can, you know, also fight as RAFA and as other groups to keep pushing. And it's just a beginning. So let's keep talking about this. Thank you all.
Perfect. Okay, who wants to speak for group two?
I can talk a bit. Yeah, it was really good.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, obviously not enough time, but yeah, we were talking about you know, two of the issues when it comes to work to rule are obviously the pressure from administrators to do the work that needs to be done, but just you know, as potently and as you know, as importantly, is from students, right? And we talked about how do we create student solidarity in an action like this, which asks us to scale back our labor, right? And work together with students to still have meaningful classes, right? But at the same time, work together. And we also discussed about how this can work in tandem with strike as an escalating action. And I think it's, you know, it's an interesting idea and one that, yeah, I hope we all think more about, and you should link up with your local RAFA rep and try and get, you know, start the conversations at the local level between your comrades and your departments, right? How we can start organizing amongst ourselves at the very, very local level at CUNY and start building upwards, right? With these kinds of escalating actions. So yeah, thanks.
Thanks, Nick. So Tom is going to speak for group three.
Thanks, Rebecca. Yeah, we never have enough time in these groups. So I just posted in the chat 2 different links, regardless of what breakout group you were in. Obviously, one of the things that RAFA is pushing right now is our strike authorization vote petition to the union's leadership. We have 1,200 plus signatures on it. I would love to have 5,000 signatures on it, because that could shift the conversation in the union considerably. I think we would have several thousand more people signing it if we had the capacity and the phone banking army that we need. Phone banking can be a little bit intimidating, and that's why we try to do it in Zoom calls, so you have some kind of emotional backup if you get off like a weird call. And so it can also be fun. strangely. So there's also the question of like different campuses forming strike authorization vote committees. This is something that it weirdly has been tacitly kind of approved by the union's leadership, but people have on different campuses got a lot of pushback from different chapter chairs because they don't have their ducks in a row and everything is a little bit rogue, and people don't know if they're going to say something to accidentally offend our very top-down bureaucratic leadership, but it falls to us to organize these committees ourselves. So if you're interested in doing that and you want support and backup in doing that, scroll up in the chat and you can see there campus RAFA contacts, and we will get back to you and we will help you and support you in forming those committees. Thanks.
Sorry, I was reading the chat. There's so many great questions. Group 4.
Did Joseph want to do it, or am I doing it? Doesn't.
I was gonna do it. Well.
Okay, Boydie, you do it. That's fine.
Okay, so we just, I mean, I felt like that was like a 30-second breakout room. So we barely got started. We created it, Pam created a Discord chat for us, which we posted the link here too, for us to follow up on the conversation. Hailey from FreeCUNY talked a lot about recognizing students as active agents. And it sounds like even just hearing some of what you talked about in the other groups, like we're all thinking about this, which was awesome. We're all thinking about how to make sure that students are absolutely on board with the kind of risky actions we're talking about taking. We talked about how to build trust with students and how to cultivate communication channels in the midst of this pandemic, and specifically around collecting stories around campus surveillance, which apparently they're already doing at an account called Black at CUNY, because we keep hearing about student harassment by campus security agents, and I think it would be really important to start to sort of gather those stories so we can fight back. FreeCUNY will also come to your classes and talk about what FreeCUNY's vision is for the university, because as Hailey said, it's really important to allow students to dream about the university that they want. And I don't know, was there anything else? The YDSAs are pretty new and hoping to grow and work, and they're doing an awesome job. That's all I've got so far.
Yeah, and the emphasis was on communication.
Yeah, I mean, in the end, it's you know, Brian, I'm just thinking about your question about support across job titles. I mean, that's what rank and file action is trying to do. Is rank and file is not, we're not just adjuncts for full-timers. We want HEOs, we want CETs, we want CLTs. You know, we want to do, you know, from the ground up, trying to reach out to people. We don't have the infrastructure that the PSC leadership has, but we're trying to build it. And that's why we have these town halls, and that's why we're always happy to see new faces every time. So is there any other, was there someone, are we calling stack? Are we still talking? We're now 15 minutes past. If people still want to talk, we can. Thanks, Danny. Yes, Jerry.
Hi, I'm Jerry Martini. We've used a lot of PSC acronyms tonight, and so for those of you who are longtime PSC members, please add to the glossary, the crowdsourced glossary that I'm trying to create of various PSC terms. And for those that are relatively new to the PSC, hopefully you'll be able to learn something and get some of these acronyms that have been thrown at you, get some information on it. But I'm really, we started with a 1-page document and we're on 7 pages right now. So suggest terms that you want to know, correct terms that you don't like what they look like. We'd love to have this be as useful to everybody as possible.
Okay, great. Thank you, Jerry. Yeah, it does become alphabet soup, which is something you're supposed to avoid. But, you know, CLTs are college laboratory technicians. We have NTAs, which are non-teaching adjuncts. CETs, continuing education teachers. Jerry is a HEO, which is Higher Education Officer. And I'm sure there's more that I don't even know about or can't remember. CLIP, there's different programs. There's so many more. So 7 pages, I listed like 5 lines of a 7-page document. So we're just kind of debating. If there's anyone who has any sort of pressing question or a comment or would like more information or a comment, speak now. Okay, Carol's put herself on stack. So Carol.
Yeah, I would like to propose that, well, a couple of things. We have delegates, a number of delegates to the DA, that we write up a resolution saying that we demand that the DA have a debate as opposed over, you know, the question of striking, as opposed to Barbara constantly saying we have to talk to 30, that's what she said yesterday. We have to talk to 30,000 people and listen, and that's the most important thing. And it's time to start proposing, you know, as opposed to, not that we shouldn't listen, but it's time to start proposing. And it's time that the DA, which is the major body, start discussing the question of strike in a real way. And I think that for people who are on different campuses who don't have SAVs, that we should write at BCC. Like, I'll write up a resolution for our next meeting proposing that we have an SAV at BCC, and who's ever, you know, doesn't have one, and most of us, I think we don't, should write up resolutions saying at the next chapter meeting that you have that this is what we need to do, and that we have to begin to build this, not just one-to-one, but when we have Zoom meetings, that we propose these resolutions.
That's great, thanks. So I think we'll sort of end it here. And again, if, you know, there's been so many links in there. Was there someone else on stack or no?
Can I just quickly jump in? I just want to say that I have been trying to find out what's happening with that grievance, and I talked to somebody today, I guess I'll just put, I don't care, I'll put my, I didn't really want to put my email there because it's like, this is recorded and it's like, I assume going to be public, but I'm happy to share the information. So if there's a way, you know, maybe people can, I know quite a few of you have my email. I'm happy, like it's fine to forward. I'm trying to gather, because the union is refusing to communicate anything about what's happening with the grievance. And today I was told, like, communications committee has to talk about this, and I was like, fine, can I join communications committee? And then it was like, oh, well, you know, we don't really have a communications department. And I was just like, is like, what? You just told me that communications committee has to communicate, and the grievance counselor said that she can't communicate directly because she has to tell the communications. I mean, it was really like I felt like I was I entered some kind of like weird Kafkaesque like moment. So I have been trying, I found out that Monday there's, I guess, the group that's representing us is going to talk to CUNY. I only found out because I happened to email this person today that the CUNY canceled the meeting that was supposed to happen like a month ago, or no, it was supposed to happen the first Monday just before school started. That got canceled. That CUNY then can, they have like something like 3 weeks to reply. That union is discussing if CUNY says no, if they will take this to arbitration. Then I asked who is deciding, like who is the arbitration committee. Apparently there's that committee, and then I was told, well, they're pretty convinced, you don't need to talk to them. I mean, there's just like so much of that. So if anybody wants to, if anybody else in a similar situation who is represented, who wants to get in touch, feel free. I don't know, I'm Alex, or like anybody at RAFA, I feel like you guys have my email. Feel free to forward. I think it's really important for those of us who are part of this group that's being represented to actually try to communicate and find out and share information we have, since nobody else, like you know, nobody else seems to. So I'm happy to take upon myself to like down all the stuff, but oh yeah, and they're like, oh, we're getting hundreds of emails to get back to everybody. And I was just like, well, maybe if you just posted this information, you wouldn't be getting hundreds of emails. Anyway, so that's all. Sorry to jump in. But
no, that's absolutely fine. Yeah, these are all of these things. It's like leadership is, you know, saying they're doing all these things, but then when we actually talk to people, they're like, well, I haven't heard anything. I haven't, nobody's told me this. I still got fired. I don't have, you know, all of these different things.
And I was told that they're refusing to represent any individual grievances. They're basically like, we don't have enough people to represent individual grievances. We're all part-time. I mean, it was just sort of like, and I was like, what do you mean you refuse? Like, don't we have rights to file a grievance? Like, isn't that part of the, so anyway, so that's what I got.
Right. Well, this is why rank and file action exists. Go ahead, Pam.
Yeah, no, I just want to say the union is bound by law to represent you. And if they can't do an individual grievance, if you have one, they're bound. They have to do it. I think it's not duty of care, but it's duty of representation. I think it is. It's in the law. So they can't tell you that. I mean, they might have told you that, but that's not that. They can't say that, because then you can take them to court, just so you know.
Okay.
They have to represent you. So, but let's talk offline. I know.
Okay.
But what I'm saying is
let's talk.
On this call.
Yes.
Just so everyone on this call knows, the union has to represent a grievance if they've determined that you have a grievance. So you need to be represented. So it's I can't even believe they said that. Anyway, but let's definitely
let's connect off. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
It's great. That's exactly what we want happening, right? So everyone connecting across campus, across titles, you know, really working with and for each other and all of that. Does anyone else have any closing words? Thoughts? Okay. Joseph.
Hi. Just very quickly, hi, I'm Joseph. I'm a student at Hunter College, a member of the Young Democratic Socialists of America. So, CUNY YDSA. I just wanted to say that for any interested faculty member, especially professors, if they may join to the Discord channel that was created during the Student Solidarity breakout group. I just posted a link. I think that is a great means for us to trying to forward our for groups as CUNY YDSA and FreeCUNY to try to establish a stronger relationship with faculty. Especially, I think that we will really help the help of like trying to disseminate information of our demonstrations, actions, and for instance, meetings. And I think that will be of great help to professors, because they wouldn't have to put themselves in an uncomfortable position, let's say, with the students talking about activism or helping them, because that's a task that, for instance, we could take care of to a certain extent. In that sense, like professor will be more an intermediary between our parties. In that way, we could talk with them more aggressively about establishing a strong relationship with labor at CUNY and the necessity of helping staff in the end. Yeah, so I just wanted to share that.
Okay, perfect, great, thank you so much. That is a great question. Does anyone know, are these chats going to be made available? Is that once the recording is available, will the chat be available too? I don't know how that works. Does anyone have an answer on that?
Yeah, it depends. If it's recorded to the cloud, the chat will be part of the recording. If it's recorded to a computer, it vanishes, I think, generally.
Okay, so
you can save the chat now.
It's a separate file.
Yeah, just save it. Everyone can save the chat. It's just the 3 dots.
I didn't know that. Okay. Perfect. Okay, anyways. All right, thank you all so much for coming. It's been great. I love the solidarity, and if we'll just call it a night, because I'll keep babbling. That's a fact. So thanks for coming, everybody. Reach out to your comrades on your campuses, and let's start a revolution. Come on. Okay.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
I don't know how to get out of this. Escape.
Like leave.